This is part 3 of redrawing the world's borders, now starting in Asia. We start off with the most unstable country in the world, Afghanistan. There's surprisingly not a lot of independence movements, as one might believe, and mostly just Republican and Taliban forces continuing to fight, although I didn't say none. One of the biggest movements is the creation of Hazarajat, which is located in the central Afghan highlands. The region is primarily inhabited by the Hazara people. There were many unsuccessful attempts to create a Hazara state in the 19th century, but were crushed by Amir Abdul Rahman Khan and resulted in the Hazara massacre. True autonomy was achieved during the 1970s when the Afghan government was in a crisis and then invaded by the Soviet Union. Hazarajat was never occupied by the Soviets or the DRA. It was ruled by the Revolutionary Council of Islamic Unity of Afghanistan, which improved the region significantly. When the Taliban took control of the region, fears of genocide arose, resulting in some uprisings. With current instability and the lack of a real government, independence is a good fix. Now, I'm not done with Afghanistan, but instead of giving independence, we'll carve up the northwest of the country based on some ethnic lines, most noticeably the unification of Badakhshan, a region mostly inhabited by Tajiks and Pamiris. And to the west is the Afghan Turkestan, which we'll give to Turkmenistan. Next up is China, for which we'll condemn the 1956 annexation for Tibet, giving it independence. Along with this is giving the independence to Uyghuristan in western China, as the communist regime has been subjecting the Muslim population to acts of discrimination and forcing its state atheism policy in the region. Transitioning to India, where there's only 3 independence movements that are represented properly. I say that as there are many militant groups that represent independence movements. Militant groups will not be recognized on this channel. Now that that's out of the way, we will be going to Dravida Nadu in southern India. The movement started in the 1930s as with the abolishment of the caste hierarchy, which was used in British India. In 1937, Hindustani was introduced as a subject in schools, resulting in widespread protest, and as a surge of nationalism in the region. For the area primarily spoke Tamil. The party that dominated this movement was the Justice Party, who was more liberal with their focus points on language and culture. In the 1940s, former members of the Justice Party left to form the more radical Dravidian Progressive Federation, with goals of full independence. Today, only the DPF exists and dominates the Tamil Nadu Assembly, with 133 seats out of the 234. Current support for the independence of Dravida Nadu is still strong, for which we'll give independence. Going to eastern India, we have 2 more independence movements, Tipuland and Mizoland. Tipuland was once an independent kingdom and princely state in the British Raj, but joined the Indian Republic in 1948, and the idea of independence might have just never existed if it were not for the Paidat Bharatan Manikia Deb Barma, or just Deb Barma, who in 2019 left the Tripura Pradesh Congress Committee after becoming president. He left as he felt the part did not represent the Tripuri people, so he made his own party, the Tripura Matha Party. After some years and a coalition of other parties, the political party had the majority of seats and was the main opposition in the area. Another thing that's interesting about the whole thing is that the founder of the party is actually the former prince of the Tripura kingdom, and today his party is still a strong advocate for self-determination. Next, there's Mizoland, where the strife for independence started in the strangest of times, during a famine. In 1958, a famine occurred in the Mizo Hills, and the Indian government's response was for the most part lacking. In response, the members of the Mizo people created the Mizo National Famine Front, which they later changed its name in 1960 to the Mizo National Front. Some speed bumps to the peaceful process for self-determination did occur, where members of the party encouraged and participated in a Mizo National Front uprising that lasted over 20 years until 1986, where a peace deal was signed by the Indian government. Nevertheless, the Mizo Nation Front still continues to represent the Mizo people, has won a significant number of seats in the Mizoram Legislative Assembly, so we'll give them independence. Now, the final issue involving India also concerns Pakistan and China, but since China loses territory bordering India, it doesn't really count anymore, but it's still an issue, and that is the Kashmir conflict in North, which is currently controlled by China, Pakistan, and India. The issue stems from a mixed population in the region being Hindu, Buddhist, and Muslim. Now I have no idea why China is concerned with this issue, but we're just going to ignore their claims. And divide the state by religious lines, giving portions of the state to Pakistan. Moving on to Indonesia, a country based solely on archipelagos and island chains. One of these islands is Papua, shared with the country of Papua New Guinea. West Papua is home to the West Papuan Independence Movement, which, as you can guess, advocates for the independence of West Papua, or a unification with Papua New Guinea. The historical background of the movement started in 1963 with the New York Agreement, when the Netherlands, who controlled West Papua at the time, would transfer it to Indonesia. Both parties signed the agreement without the consideration of the West Papuan Council. Also, the Indonesian government, instead of following the New York Agreement, broke it, and they created the Act of Free Choice and held a referendum. This referendum, to either join or stay independent, was held by only 1,000 people. This started the conflict, which is ongoing, with the Indonesian government committing crimes against humanity, such as genocide, SA, and forced assimilation. To end hostilities, I will give West Papua independence. Now there is Iran, a country well known for its suppression of, well, everything. But that's going to change, in a geopolitical sense. I can't solve the other problems that they're stuck with. First is the independence of Alawazi, comprising the Kurdistan province. The region's predominantly Arab population has almost always had autonomy from the Persian government up until 1921, when the coup led by Reza Shah ousted the Prime Minister Fatullah Khan Akbar. The province then led a revolt to come under the British sphere of influence, which was suppressed in 1925. And then, also in 1925, the autonomous status of the area was revoked with the centralization of Persia. Things stayed relatively normal, and economically, the area became richer with the oil production. But during the 1975 revolution, the region then broke away unsuccessfully. Then later, Iraq, led by Saddam Hussein, at the time declared war on Iran. One of the reasons is to unite with Alawazi for Baathism, or the creation of one Arab state. Today, the region still faces discrimination from the Iranian government, and many acts of violence have occurred against the people. But I'm on the fence if I should give it to independence or to Iraq. The advocacy group that represents the region is represented by the Unrepresented Peoples and Nations Organization. It has goals of independence, so maybe. But I don't really know, so comment down below if you think they should unite with Iraq or just stay independent. Next is the independence of Kurdistan, comprising of the provinces of West Azerbaijan, Kurdistan, and Kermanshah. I probably butchered that. Now, the Kurdish people have always longed for independence, and many times there were states for the Kurds, but none of them prevailed. The closest time was in 1946 after World War II, when Iran was divided between the Soviets and the British. The Soviets created the Republic of Mahabad to gain territory in Iran, such as a new Soviet republic. But after the Soviets left Iran, the republic fell and the leader was killed. Today, there are still many political parties and conflicts with the goal of an independent Kurdistan in Iran, and so to that, I'll give them independence. The third change to Iran's border is the independence or unification of southern Azerbaijan to Azerbaijan proper, comprising the provinces of Ardabil and East Azerbaijan. South Azerbaijan and Azerbaijan proper was once ruled by the Persian Empire up until 1813, when the two were split between the Russians and Persians after the Russo-Persian War, and then again in 1820 with the Second Russo-Persian War. The Azerbaijanis in Iran lived normally and were not affected at all up until 1941, when the Soviets invaded Iran, where they set up the Autonomous People's Government of Azerbaijan in hopes of annexing it. But the majority of the population did not want to separate from Iran, and when the Soviets left, the republic quickly fell. South Azerbaijan was also not affected that much during the Iranian Revolution, but in modern times there has been significant evidence that the Iranian government is committing cultural genocide by banning the language of Azeri Turkish in schools and public, which also breaks its own constitution. The destruction of cultural heritage sites such as Tabriz Castle. So I'll give them independence. The last thing I'll do to change Iran's border is the independence of Balochistan by releasing the province of Balochistan. Kind of a no-brainer there. Balochistan was ruled by the Persian Empire for a long time and didn't have any rights, so when the Iranian Revolution occurred, political organizations advocating for the independence of Balochistan were banned. Today, there is currently a war in the area between the Iranian government and the Baloch rebels. So, I'll give it independence. Now there's Iraq, a pretty unstable country in the Middle East that's rich in oil and separatism. First, we separate Kurdistan and Iraq, as the Kurdish government has already de facto control in the north. Next is the separation of Turkmenly, a region right next to Kurdistan that is primarily inhabited by the people of Turkish descent and speak Turkish, so independence. Next, there is the creation of Assyria, located in the Nineveh Plains. Another thing we will do is unite Iranian Kurdistan with Iraqi Kurdistan to make the map somewhat clean. Now, here's a pretty controversial statement, but who cares? But Palestine and Israel shall remain two separate states based on the 1967 borders, aka Gaza Strip and East Bank and East Jerusalem. But this probably won't solve the problem going on, but who cares? Maybe we can do Israelistan, but I haven't really drawn the map, so just two separate countries, I guess. Now we're almost done with Asia, but then there's Nepal, located in the north of the Indian Plateau. The Nepali government has been banning political movements in the area of the Madhesh region for some time, located in the south of the country. The region is primarily inhabited by the Madheshi people, which is more or less a term used for people who don't speak the Pameri language in Nepal. In 2015, a mock referendum was conducted in the region and had overwhelmingly pro-independence, so I'll give them independence. Next is Sri Lanka, an island nation underneath India, which is currently going through civil unrest, and one of the factions is the Tamil interim government, a provisional government of a sort that seeks the independence of a largely Tamil-speaking population of the north and east of the island, which has often been discriminated against because the people don't speak Tamil, or the majority. So to end hostilities, I'll give Tamil Eelam independence, or just the Tamil-speaking region of the island. Now again, I'm going to be kind of breaking one of my own rules, but who cares? But Syria is currently going through a civil war, and amongst the factions is Rojava, a provisional government that controls much of the northern Syria, is primarily Kurdish, with other minorities. And with the way the war is going, and it's likely going to be with a pro-Assad victory, giving Rojava independence or integration with Kurdistan would be perfect for the people living there. And that is what I'll do. And to almost end this video, we travel to everyone's favorite country of Uzbekistan, where during the time of the Soviet Union, the republic had an autonomous Soviet republic called Karelpakistan. I definitely butchered that. Inhabited by the Karelpaks, who did not speak Uzbek. They had a somewhat autonomy, and during the collapse of the Soviet Union, the autonomous republic broke away, but was later reabsorbed into Uzbekistan. Today, the Uzbek government is pursuing a goal of Uzbekification, which is a term used for when the country forces the Uzbek language on speakers of other minority language. Basically, Russification, but with Uzbek language and culture on a minority. And to solve this, we'll just give Karelpakistan independence. And finally, we give the Kurdish portions of Turkey to Kurdistan proper. And we are definitely missing some countries that have a lot of other problems, such as Russia and Myanmar. We'll be covering that in a separate video for individual countries because there's just way too many things to solve there. But thank you for watching this video, and honestly, the amount of subscribers we gained in the last year, basically, this is going to come out in 2024, I guess. But thank you for doing this, and yeah, thank you. I don't know how to end this.